Namaskar, a warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Anita Anand and with me is Nishit Kumar bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi calls for vaccination festival against COVID-19 from 11th to 14th of April. Reviews situation and expansion of vaccination program with chief ministers. New Zealand decides to temporarily suspend entry of Indian travellers from Sunday, the 11th of April, in the wake of rise in COVID cases. A slew of projects in Seychelles inaugurated jointly in a virtual mode by Prime Minister Modi with Seychelles President Ram Kalawan. Iran welcomes Vienna talks to resolve the standoff over its nuclear program. In sports, Netra Kumanan becomes first Indian woman sailor to qualify for Olympics, and 14th edition of Indian Premier League will begin in Chennai on Friday. As the number of COVID cases are on the rise again, we appeal to our listeners not to lower the guard, follow all the precautions, and all those above 45 years to get vaccinated without any hesitation. Stay safe and protected by following these three simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. And now the news in detail. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has called for mass vaccination program from 11th to 14th of this month and observe as COVID-19 vaccination festival. 11th of April is the birth anniversary of Jyotirao Phule, while 14th of April is the birth anniversary of Baba Saheb Ambedkar. Mr. Modi urged the youth to come forward and help senior citizens and others who need help to register for COVID vaccination. He was interacting with chief ministers of states this evening on COVID situation through video conferencing. Mr. Modi stressed on the need to create micro-containment zones to effectively contain the rising cases of COVID-19. He urged states to intensify their efforts on war footing. Mr. Modi said Maharashtra, Chhattisgarh, Punjab, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat and other states have crossed the peak of the first wave, and some other states are also moving towards it quickly. He said it is worrying and a serious concern for all. He said the country has already crossed the time of peak of the first wave, and the growth rate this time is faster than the first wave. The Prime Minister said a challenging situation is emerging again. He urged the states to focus on test, track, treat, COVID-appropriate behavior and COVID management. The Prime Minister appealed to states to stress on COVID-19 testing, and the target is to do 70% RT-PCR tests. Mr. Modi said proper sample collection is very important and it can be checked through proper governance. He said that despite challenges, India has better experience, resources and COVID vaccines than ever before. Mr. Modi said governments have to ensure that contact tracing is done rigorously and everybody follows SOPs released by the Health Ministry. He said along with public participation, our hard-working doctors and healthcare staff have helped a lot in handling the situation and are still doing it. Mr. Modi said, once again, we need to raise awareness about the importance of wearing a mask and following COVID-19 safety protocols. The meeting came in the wake of a steep rise in fresh infections. Mr. Modi also discussed the ongoing vaccination drive during the virtual meet. Meanwhile, India has said that there is no ban on export of vaccines, replying to media queries. MEA spokesperson Arindam Bagchi said supplies of made-in-India vaccines abroad will continue, taking into account the domestic requirements.
We've always said that supply of made-in-India vaccines abroad would continue, taking into account our domestic requirements. Let me reiterate that there is no ban on export of vaccines. In fact, the website of our ministry is being updated regularly to reflect that the supply of vaccines that are happening on a periodic basis.
On a query on vaccine supplied to Paraguay, the spokesperson said Foreign Minister of Paraguay had made the request for vaccine supply during a phone call with External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, and Made in India vaccine was sent to Paraguay. He said no third party was involved in it. Mr. Bagchi said India is opening an embassy in Paraguay. Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Thursday received his second vaccine shot and urged eligible Indians to get vaccinated to stem the surge in cases. Meanwhile, the Health and Family Welfare Minister Dr. Harshvardhan rejected the claims of shortage of vaccines in the country. He said central government is continuously monitoring and enhancing the supplies of COVID-19 vaccines to the states and union territories. In a series of tweets, the minister said over 9 crore doses of COVID-19 vaccines have been administered to the beneficiaries in the country so far. He said around 4 crore 30 lakh doses of vaccines are in stock and ready to be delivered to the states.
Now let us take a look at the coronavirus updates from around the world.
New Zealand on Thursday said it will temporarily suspend entry for all travellers arriving from India. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said the suspension will begin on Sunday the 11th of April and will remain in place until the 28th of April. Australia has no plans to alter its rollout of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. Prime Minister Scott Morrison said on Thursday. On Wednesday, Europe's drug regulatory agency, the European Medicines Agency, while saying that it found very rare links between blood clots and its usage, said that the AstraZeneca vaccine is very effective against the coronavirus.
A plausible explanation for these rare side events is an immune response to the vaccine. The benefits of the AstraZeneca vaccine in preventing COVID-19 overall outweigh the risks of side effects.
Meanwhile, the European Court on Human Rights ECHR ruled on Thursday that compulsory vaccinations would not contravene human rights law and may be necessary in democratic societies. The ruling came following conclusion of a complaint brought to the court by Czech families regarding compulsory jabs for children. Director General of WHO, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, thanked Prime Minister Narendra Modi for highlighting that each and every one of us has a role to play in stopping COVID-19 transmission. Mr. Modi had, on the occasion of World Health Day on Wednesday, stressed on the importance of wearing a mask, regularly washing hands, and following the other COVID-related protocols. Argentina on Wednesday announced new restrictions to fight a second wave of the COVID-19 infections. Among the measures which are set to begin Friday and last for 3 weeks are a nightly curfew between midnight and 6 a.m., the closure of bars and restaurants after 11 p.m., and restrictions on family gatherings. And the International Monetary Fund, IMF, has launched a $650 billion expansion of its emergency reserves to help the poorest countries recover from the pandemic. The IMF justified the move, saying that the COVID crisis highlighted the vulnerability chain between all nations. Abhishek Mukhopadhyay for World News, All India Radio.
Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina on Thursday warned of tougher steps to protect the life of people from the coronavirus in view of the surge in new infections and death in the country. Prime Minister Hasina urged the people to follow the health directives and wear masks to protect themselves and people around them. Meanwhile, on Thursday, Bangladesh recorded the highest number of deaths in a single day ever since the corona pandemic hit the country in March last year. Bangladesh also started administering the second dose of the corona vaccine from Thursday. On the fourth day of the countrywide lockdown, Bangladesh announced yet another rollback, with shops and malls being allowed to open for 8 hours in the day from 9 in the morning to 5 in the evening from Friday. This is All India Radio giving you the world news.
3 steps to stay protected and stay safe from COVID-19. Wear face mask, 2 gaz ki duri to maintain social distancing, maintain hand and face hygiene.
Welcome back to World News. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Seychelles President Wavel Ramkalawan on Thursday jointly inaugurated several Indian projects in Seychelles at a high-level virtual event this evening. Speaking on the occasion, the Prime Minister said that India and Seychelles share a strong and vital partnership in the Indian Ocean neighborhood.
India and Seychelles share a strong and a vital partnership in the Indian Ocean neighborhood. Seychelles is central to India's vision of Sagar, security and growth for all in the region. India is honored to be a partner of Seychelles in the development of its security capabilities and in meeting its infrastructure and developmental needs.
Mr. Modi said during times of need, India was able to supply essential medicines and 50,000 doses of made-in-India COVID-19 vaccines to Seychelles. He said Seychelles was the first African country to receive the made-in-India COVID-19 vaccines. The Prime Minister said India is happy to have contributed towards the construction of the new Magistrates Court building in Seychelles.
We are happy to have contributed towards the construction of the new Magistrates Court building in Seychelles. This state-of-the-art building has been completed even during these testing times of COVID-19 pandemic. I'm sure that it will be long remembered as a symbol of our deep and abiding friendship.
Mr. Modi said India is committed to strengthening the maritime security of Seychelles.
India is committed to strengthening the maritime security of Seychelles. Today, we are handing over a new state-of-the-art, made in India, fast patrol vessel to the Seychelles Coast Guard. This vessel will help Seychelles to protect its maritime resources. Climate change poses a special threat to island countries. Therefore, I am happy that today we are handing over a 1 megawatt solar power plant in the Seychelles built with India's assistance.
Mr. Modi said Vavel Ram Kalawan is a son of India with his roots at Gopalganj in Bihar. He said today not just the people of his village but all Indians feel proud of his achievements. In his address, Seychelles President said India is a reliable and trusted partner. He said India never failed us. The virtual event also saw the handing over of 10 high-impact community development projects, HICDPs, implemented by the High Commission of India in collaboration with local bodies, educational and vocational institutions. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will take part in the Leaders' Summit on Climate along with other world leaders on 22nd and 23rd of this month. India's External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Arindam Bagchi said U.S. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate John Kerry's visit was in the run-up to the summit convened by the U.S. He said meetings with Mr. Kerry were productive and both sides discussed the global challenge of climate change. Mr. Kerry appreciated Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision and global leadership in climate action, especially India's ambitious target of 450 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030.
Given our complementary strengths, Prime Minister and Special Envoy Kerry agreed to collaborate on a 2030 agenda with focus on clean and green energy through enhancing availability of climate finance, building resilient infrastructure, energy storage and green hydrogen. The Indian side briefed him about our wide-ranging efforts to meet commitments under the Paris Agreement and our efforts to reduce emissions, and India's lead in multilateral initiatives such as the International Solar Alliance and the Coalition of Disaster Resilient Infrastructure.
India's close, time-tested and strategic relations with Russia stand on their own merit and are not influenced by relations with other countries. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov held delegation-level talks in Delhi on Tuesday. External Affairs Ministry spokesperson said the visit was a good opportunity to renew and review the special privileged partnership. Foreign Minister of Russia Sergei Lavrov recently concluded his visit to India. A report.
Both ministers assessed positively the economic cooperation, noting new opportunities in the Russian Far East. On the aspect of connectivity, External Affairs Minister of India Dr. S. Jaishankar noted the progress on the International North-South Transport Corridor and the Chennai-Vladivostok Maritime Corridor.
We talked about long-standing partnership in nuclear, space and defense sectors. We assessed positively our economic cooperation, noting the new opportunities in Russian Far East. We spoke of connectivity, including the International North-South Transport Corridor and the Chennai-Vladivostok Eastern Maritime Corridor. Our rapidly expanding energy cooperation that now includes long-term commitments was also on the agenda. On my part, I briefed Minister Lavrov on recent developments in India that open up new opportunities for Russian businesses in various sectors. The Atmanirbhar Bharat economic vision can facilitate a more contemporary economic relationship in the post-COVID era.
Dr. Jaishankar also appreciated Russia's support for India's Gaganyaan program and their joint effort in fighting the COVID pandemic.
Russian support for our Gaganyaan program has progressed, which we deeply appreciate. Our defense sector requirements in the past year were expeditiously addressed, and in meeting the COVID challenge, our pharmaceutical collaboration has become more serious, and as many of you are aware, we have a Russian vaccine under discussion for production in India.
On the cooperation in the Indo-Pacific, Dr. Jaishankar said that Russia is very important in India's Act East and Beyond policy.
I shared our viewpoint on the Indo-Pacific. As our Prime Minister pointed out at the Shangri-La Dialogue some years ago, contemporary challenges require countries to work together in new and different ways. Such cooperation also reflects the multipolar and rebalanced character of global politics. India is strongly committed to ASEAN centrality, and this is underlined by the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative that it has been advocating at the East Asia Summit. As we implement our Act East and Beyond policy, Russia is a very important partner, whether it is their Far East or whether it is the Chennai-Vladivostok corridor.
Pointing to opportunities for economic cooperation, Dr. Jaishankar underlined the production-linked incentive policy of the Government of India and encouraged Russian investors to take part in it. Russian Foreign Minister Mr. Sergei Lavrov in his address said that the ties between India and Russia are valuable, mutually respectful and are not subjected to political fluctuations. Anuja Kumar for AIR World News.
India has said that it would like disengagement in the eastern Ladakh sector in order to overall bilateral relations between India and China to progress. This was stated by the External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Arindam Bagchi at press briefing on Thursday.
We would like to see disengagement in the remaining areas, which would lead to de-escalation in eastern Ladakh, and that would hopefully lead to restoration of peace and tranquility and provide conditions for progress of our overall bilateral relationship. During the meeting on March 12th on the Working Mechanism on Coordination and Consultation, WMCC, both sides had agreed to convene the 11th round of the Senior Commanders meeting.
The first delegation-level virtual police chiefs dialogue between the police chiefs of India and Sri Lanka was held on Thursday. The Indian delegation was led by Director Intelligence Bureau Arvind Kumar, while the Sri Lankan delegation was led by Inspector General of Police C.D. Vikramaratne. Both sides appreciated ongoing action against the drug traffickers and other organized criminals exploiting the narrow sea route between the two countries. They have emphasized the need for sharing of real-time intelligence and feedback. India and Sri Lanka also agreed to work jointly against the terrorist entities, including the global terrorist groups and fugitives wherever they are present and active. Envoys from major powers met separately with Iran and the United States to discuss how to bring both back into compliance with the 2015 nuclear deal that Washington abandoned 3 years ago. A report.
The talks that began in Vienna on Tuesday was the first indirect talks between the US and Iran since the former President Trump unilaterally withdrew from the JCPOA and imposed sanctions on Iran. The European and other diplomats acted as intermediaries because Tehran rejects face-to-face talks for now. Under the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, Iran had vowed to limit its nuclear program in return for the lifting of economic sanctions. Tehran has in recent times carried out progressive violations of the JCPOA and increased its enriched uranium reserves. A senior Iranian official reportedly said on Wednesday that Iran has produced 55 kilograms of uranium enriched to 20% since the beginning of the year. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, however, said that the talks in Vienna had opened a new chapter. The deal's remaining parties, Iran, Britain, China, France, Germany and Russia, agreed on Tuesday to form two expert-level groups. The groups would be looking into the list of sanctions that the United States could lift and the nuclear obligations Iran should meet. Abhishek Mukhopadhyay for World News, All India Radio.
This is All India Radio giving you the world news.
The Supreme Court of India on Thursday said that Rohingyas detained in Jammu shall not be deported to Myanmar without following the prescribed process. A bench headed by Chief Justice S.A. Bobde passed the order on a plea seeking immediate release of detained Rohingya refugees in Jammu and a direction to restrain centre from deporting them to Myanmar. The centre had earlier opposed the plea, saying that the country cannot be the capital for illegal immigrants. Opposing the application, Solicitor General Tushar Mehta argued that that a similar application concerning Rohingyas in Assam was dismissed in 2018 and that the petitioner had suppressed the fact. He also submitted that deportation is done in accordance with the procedure established by law and hence it cannot be held to be violative of the right to life under Article 21 of the Constitution. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh will have a bilateral meeting with the visiting Defense Minister of Kazakhstan, Lieutenant General Nurlan Yermakbayev in New Delhi on Friday. The Kazakhstan Defense Minister is on a 4-day visit to India.
In the central Indian state of Chhattisgarh, Maoists have released the abducted CRPF personnel in Bijapur district of Bastar division Thursday evening. CRPF's Cobra Battalion Commando Rakeshwar Singh Manhas hails from Jammu and was part of the CRPF team that was attacked by Maoists in Taram area of Bijapur district on 3rd of this month. After his release, the CRPF personnel reached Basaguda police station. Maoists handed over the abducted Jawan to social worker Dharamlal Saini and tribal community leader Telam Boraya at an undisclosed location in the forests. India and Maldives have condemned all forms of terrorism, including cross-border terrorism. Both the countries have agreed to strengthen bilateral cooperation in counter-terrorism. Spokesperson of External Affairs Ministry Arindam Bagchi has informed that first India-Maldives counter-terrorism dialogue was held on Thursday in New Delhi. He said both sides underlined the need for all the countries to take verifiable and irreversible action to ensure that no territory under their control is used for terrorist attacks on others.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will hold a virtual summit with Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mark Rutte, on Friday. During the summit, the two leaders will discuss in detail the bilateral cooperation and look at new ways of strengthening the relationship. They will also exchange views on the regional and global issues of mutual interest. India and the Netherlands share cordial and friendly relations underpinned by shared values of democracy, rule of law and freedom. The Netherlands is home to the largest Indian diaspora in the continental Europe. Secretary West in the Ministry of External Affairs, Vikas Swarup, on Thursday delivered an address at the UN Security Council Open Debate on Mine Action and Sustaining Peace, Stronger Partnerships for Better Delivery. In his address, Mr. Swarup highlighted India's contribution towards United Nations peacekeeping operations and assistance towards international demining and rehabilitation efforts, which includes training and capacity building. He reiterated India's support to the efforts of United Nations and other agencies which have been working in conflict zones across the world and called for joint efforts to effectively combat the use of landmines and IEDs by terrorists.
Finance Minister of India, Nirmala Sitharaman, attended the plenary meeting of the International Monetary and Financial Committee of the International Monetary Fund, IMF, through video conferencing on Thursday. The meeting was attended by governors or alternate governors representing 190 member countries of the IMF. The discussions at the meeting were based on IMF Managing Director's global policy agenda titled Bolstering the Recovery, Countering Divergence. Speaking on the occasion, Mrs. Sitharaman emphasized that the transition to a low-carbon economy for promoting growth that benefits all needs to be viewed in the context of its implications for the emerging market and developing economies and low-income economies. The Sensex today rose modestly in sync with the gains in the global equity markets. On the other hand, the rupee at the foreign exchange market weakened 5 paise against the US dollar. A report from the Business World.
The Sensex at Bombay Stock Exchange gained 84 points or 0.17% to trade at 49,746. The Nifty at National Stock Exchange also climbed 55 points or 0.37% to 14,874. The mid-cap and the small-cap at BSE performed better than the Sensex. The mid-cap index rose 0.6% and the BSE small-cap index climbed 0.73%. In the Sensex pack, shares of 15 companies gained while 15 logged losses. In sectoral indices, 14 out of 19 sectors climbed. In the global equity market, most Asian stocks traded in a narrow range and ended mixed. Hong Kong's Hang Seng climbed 2% and South Korea's Kospi added marginally to close flat. On the other hand, Japan's Nikkei 225 plunged 0.8%, while China's Shanghai Composite Index and Singapore's Straits Times both fell marginally by 0.1%. European markets hit record highs on optimism around a global stimulus-led economic rebound after the US Federal Reserve pledged to keep monetary policy loose. Back home, gold prices rose 290 rupees per 10 gram at multi-commodity exchange for April contracts. Gold futures were trading around 46,650 rupees per 10 gram. Silver futures also gained 500 rupees to trade at around 67,130 rupees per kilogram for May contracts. And the rupee at the foreign exchange market weakened 5 paisa to 74 rupees and 61 paisa against the US dollar. Anupha Rohatgi for World News, All India Radio.
In the first leg of the quarter-final tie of the UEFA Champions League, Paris Saint-Germain produced a superb away performance to beat title holders Bayern Munich 3-2. In a thrilling encounter, French superstar Kylian Mbappe scored 2 goals for Paris Saint-Germain. With this, the PSG exacted revenge after its loss to the German side in last year's finals in a hugely entertaining game. In another match, Chelsea defeated FC Porto 2-0 in the Champions League. A resilient, determined and professional performance by Chelsea ensured a victory against Porto, who had eliminated Juventus in the previous round. This year's IPL 2020 cricket season begins at the Chepauk grounds in Chennai on Friday, with Mumbai Indians opening their title defence against Royal Challengers Bangalore. The epic battles in the 14th edition of the IPL are scheduled to be held at 6 venues, including Mumbai, Chennai, Bengaluru, Ahmedabad, New Delhi and Kolkata. The final will be played at the Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad on May the 30th. Meanwhile, cricketer Sachin Tendulkar is discharged after hospitalization due to the infection of COVID-19. Tendulkar had tested positive for COVID-19 with mild symptoms on 27th of March. In tennis, the French Tennis Federation on Thursday announced that due to the exceptional challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic and the national French restrictions, the French Open Roland Garros will be postponed by 1 week. On the Wimbledon, the United States Tennis Association confirmed that Wimbledon will be held as scheduled and will begin on the 28th of June. In sailing, Netra Komanan became the first ever Indian woman sailor to qualify for the Tokyo Olympics in the laser radial event, the Mosana Open Championship, which is an Asian Olympic qualifying event. She achieved this by topping the laser radial competition of the Asian qualifiers in Oman. Elsewhere, Vishnu Saravanan qualified for the Tokyo Olympic Games in laser STD class today. Vishnu finished second in the Asian qualifier event in Oman. Casey Ganapati Varun Thakur also earned their spot in the 49er class event.
Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Washington Post writes that NEC Deputy Director Bharat Ramamurthy discusses Biden's infrastructure plan. The Telegraph writes that Myanmar troops killed 13 while a Chinese factory is set on fire. The Guardian reports that Zimbabwe is under renewed pressure to give up Rwanda genocide suspect. Globe and a Mail write that Joe Biden to announce new gun control measures. Gulf Times quotes Arsene Wenger saying that FIFA is ready to use automated offside calls in Qatar 2022 World Cup. A quick look at the headlines once again. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi calls for vaccination festival against COVID-19 from 11th to 14th April. Reviews situation and expansion of vaccination program with chief ministers. New Zealand decides to temporarily suspend entry of Indian travellers from Sunday 11th April in wake of rise in COVID cases. A slew of projects in Seychelles inaugurated jointly in a virtual mode by Prime Minister Modi with Seychelles President Ramkalawan. Iran welcomes Vienna talks to resolve the standoff over its nuclear program. In sports, Netra Komanan becomes first Indian woman sailor to qualify for Olympics. And 14th edition of Indian Premier League will begin in Chennai on Friday. India is celebrating the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from Seychelles. with that, we end this bulletin. See you at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.